So one of the unique features to MoodleRooms that you don't get with other Moodle hosting services is the Personal Learning Designer. This, in essence, is a set of rules that the editing teacher can make that control access to content and send messages to students based on certain criterion. So effectively, you can set a set of criterion, bake them into your course that will trigger actions along the way. So let's have a look at that. I'm going into my MoodleRooms. I'm going into my sandpit where I'm editing teacher, and I'm going to, from the admin panel, choose the Personal Learning Designer. And you'll see when I first launch this that I have a few rules already. So rules comprise of events, conditions, and actions. Let's start with this rule because it's a fairly simple one. There's a welcome message. It's triggered when the course is entered, so when the first person logs in. It's triggered when a user hasn't logged in for 30 days. I'll come back to that when I do my demo in a sec. And it's going to display an alert. So an alert is basically a pop-up message on screen. Here's another one which I was just playing with. Anytime a quiz or an assignment is submitted, send an email. So you can see the anatomy, events, conditions, and actions are basically a trigger that will do something in MoodleRooms. So in addition to your rules, you have a history panel that shows when rules have triggered and what's happened. You can see, for instance, here was an email sent to me because I submitted a quiz in this example. So let's go ahead now and actually create a rule so that you can see the anatomy of those. So I'm going to add a rule. I give the rule a name. So in this case, what I wanted to do is I want to send emails to students who haven't logged in, say, in the last fortnight. So I give the rule a name. And then I choose the event type. So as I look down the event types, are the sorts of things that you might expect as triggers in Moodle, whether they've completed certain activities, submitted an assignment or quiz, replied to forum, etc. So you can see that you can have these triggered by the student's progression through the learning. But in this case, I'm choosing a different choice, a recurring event. And this is basically something that I want to run every single day, but only alert students that haven't logged in the last 14 days. So the first thing I want to do is set up the frequency of this rule. So I'm going to run it every day at a certain date and time. I don't really care about that, but I might as well set it in the current date window so that it doesn't have a hissy fit. Okay, that's fine. And then I hit add to that rule. You can see now that I've got an event that runs every day at 7:15. By the way, you can chain these events, so you can have a series of events to be the trigger, but let's keep things simple for now. Now I move to the conditions, and the conditions really are saying what did they do or not do in this instance. So in this case, I'm going to look to the condition of course login. Did they or did they not log into this course is the experience that I want to use. So I'm adding the condition, and I want to have the user has not logged into the course within, in my instance, 14 days. Save that. Okay, now that I've got the event and the condition, what do I want it to do? What action do I want MoodleRooms to perform on my behalf? And this is where you get to, for instance, display an alert, send an email, redirect them to a certain login, URL, etc. But what I want in this case is to send an email. So I choose send an email and click add. And first of all, who is that email to be sent from? So for instance, it might be from the teacher. Who is the email to be sent to? This is where things get a little tricky, and you've got to be really cautious that you make the right choices here. So I want it to go to the triggering user, to the student who has failed to log in. They call that the person the triggering user. And then a message. You also got tokens which are handy, so you can actually put in things like first name, last name, etc. into the messages. Let's do a better job of this. So for instance, maybe I want their first and last name here. So I can say first name, space, last name. So that basically will say, if it was me, Greg Bird, you have not logged in 14 days. And then the message. Now, of course, I'm not going to bother with that for the demo. Just put in any old dummy text. But the notion of tokens is good because you can personalize your messaging. And hit save. So now I have a completed rule. I save that to effectively commit it. And now that rule is kicked in. It will run every day. If a student hasn't logged in the previous 14 days, it will send them that email. So you can see that the capability here is really, really powerful. There's lots of opportunity to, I guess, customize the learning experience for students and even redirect their learning based on certain events. So if they complete a quiz, maybe that unlocks another bit of content. One of my challenges with Personal Learning Designer is its overlaps with other Moodle functionality, because you also have the conditional release and other tools within Moodle that perform similar actions. And so I think the challenge going forward with the Personal Learning Designer is not to get yourself tied in knots where you've got competing rules, both in PLD and also in the native core functionality of Moodle. It's very, very powerful, but I can also see opportunities to get yourself a little bit twisted.